Hello everyone, my name is Jayshree. Today I will talk about schema and validation rules in the MEN stack. So we will see how we can structure and validate data properly using Mongoose and MongoDB. So before going into the topic, do you know what the MEN stands for? So MEN stands for M for MongoDB and E for Express, R for React and N for Node.js. Let's go quickly into the introduction to the MEN stack. So understanding the MEN ecosystem. So the MEN stack is full JavaScript based web development stack. And coming to the MongoDB, MongoDB stores the data and Express handles the server routes and React manages the user interface and Node.js runs everything on the server. And this is about the MongoDB, Express.js and React and Node.js too. Let's move into the next slide. What is a schema? So a schema acts like a blueprint and it tells MongoDB what kind of data to expect, like a form template. For example, a blog schema might have a title, contact, and other field like that. So when it comes to the schema is nothing but a blueprint of the data. And let's move to the next slide. So the critical role of schemas means why the schemas is important. So without a schema, data can become messy. And using schemas ensures all documents have the right structure and type. For example, every user has a name, email, and password. So schema keep the data consistent and prevents missing or wrong data and helps with debugging too. So this is about the critical role of schema. Let's move to the next slide. Defining schema in the backend. In Menstack, we define schemas in the backend using Mongoose and a tool that helps manage MongoDB data in a structured way. And it connects objects to MongoDB collections. And this is about defining schema in the backend. So let's move to the next slide. Here is a practical example of schema, and it's nothing but a blog post. And when we post a blog, we need some title, content, and author, and we can see likes also. So for the title is nothing but the main heading of the blog post, and when it comes to the content, it's about the article that we had to post, and the author is about the writer of the post, and likes shows how many positive reactions and response that you had got. So it's a simple example and the practical example of schema. And let's go to the next slide. So schema versus the model, the key difference. A schema is just the design, while the model is working version and that interacts with the database, like the difference between a plan and a building. So let's go into the next slide. Introduction to validation rules. So validation rules make sure that the data entered is valid, like checking the mail if it has at the rate symbol or if an age isn't in negative and like that. And these validation rules stops bad, incomplete, or malformed data from reaching the database. And we have some essential validation rules too. For that, let's move to the next slide. So here is the few essential validation rules, and required is used for rejecting empty fields, and default assigns a value if missing, and unique prevents duplicates, like example email, like that. Let's move to the next few validation rules. And here we have mini length, max length. So that checks the length, and enum set of allowed values, and trim removes the white spaces, and match regex validation, and min and max made the numeric limits, and lowercase and uppercase selects validates. So up to now we have understood that what schema and validation are. So let's see where they are actually used in our real-time applications. So here is the first example, that is user registration system. In user registration systems like Instagram or Gmail or FB or some any social media account that we are using at nowadays, schema defines what details a user must provide, like name, email, and password. And validation makes sure that no one signs up with an empty email or a weak password, and so that this keeps user data clean and secure. Then let's move into the one more real-time example. So here is an one more real-time example, that is e-commerce websites. So in these websites, and schema and validation are used like schema is used for defining the product details like its name, price, category, and stock time and limit, etc. And validation shows the price isn't to be negative and stock cannot be less than zero. And it guarantees accurate product for the customers. And e-commerce websites like Amazon, Flipkart, Meesho, Mitra, at any of the platform we can use this application. Not only in social media or e-commerce areas, but we can use them in education as for accurate student data and course info, like that, and for food delivery apps for proper order and delivery tracking, and in healthcare department for reliable patient and appointment records, and at banking for safe and correct financial data, and at events for organizing and error-free ticket booking. So these are the few real-time examples that we are using. So, so this is the theoretical part of schema and validation rules. So let's go to the practical, like how we run those in using VS Code and MongoDB. Let's quickly go into that. So coming to the VS Code part, in this project, I learned how to create a simple MongoDB schema using Mongoose and perform basic validation. And I tested the schema using Node.js without Postman and checked result in MongoDB Compass. So coming to these codes, starting I had created a folder named menstack, and I had created few files regarding my project, and this is my server.js file. Sub the express server and connects my code.js application to MongoDB. So this is my server.js file, and it sets up the express server and connects my node.js application to the MongoDB. So here the key points to mention is I used Express for the backend server, and I used Mongoose to connect node.js with MongoDB, and when I run npm run dev, it shows MongoDB connected if the connection is successful. So here is user.js file. And I created the schema for my user collection using Mongoose. And here you can observe the code. I created a schema for the users, and that includes name, email, and age too. I added some validation rules. So name and emails are required. Email must be unique so that no duplicates will be allowed. So age must be between 1 and 120. And finally, I exported the model using Mongoose model. So let's move to the next part, test user.js. So in this, here I tested the schema and validation rules by using directly node.js. So here you can observe the names, email, and age. So I made an array of users. Some are valid and some are invalid too. If you can observe, I had added some comments here, what are valid and what are invalid too. And each user is checked against the schema's validation rules. If the data is valid, it gets saved to the MongoDB, and if the data is invalid, it shows an error message in the terminal. So we can run the output by using the command node test user dot js. So here is an MongoDB compass. So finally I opened MongoDB compass and connected to this IP address, and then I selected the MongoDB database, and I opened the users collection. Here I can see the valid users that were saved like Alice and Charlie. So this project helped me to understand how schema and validation works in the main stack. And finally, by the conclusion, I learned how to define a Mongo schema and how to apply validation rules and how to save data to MongoDB and how to check rules in MongoDB Compass. Well, that brings me to the end of my presentation on schema and validation. Rules in the main stack. I hope this session gave you a clear understanding of how schemas define the structure of data and how validation ensures the data is correct before saving it. So, we also saw real world examples from social media apps to e commerce platforms, blogs, student management systems, and food delivery apps, showing that schema and validation are everywhere in modern applications. Using these effectively helps keep applications organized, reliable, and secure. So, thank you for your time and attention.